Hey there, BookTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm giving you the second installment in A Closer book. So a couple of days ago, I filmed a video where I talked about the first 3 books that I read in 2017. So today I'm going to talk about books 4, 5, and 6. Today's video might be a little bit of a collage. I previously filmed talks about some of the books and I no longer have the physical books because a couple of them were from the library. So I'm gonna kind of splice videos where I talked about one book with another video where I talked about another book. So today's gonna be a little bit of an adventure. Book number 4 of 2017 was Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. This was my first time reading anything by this author and I am so hooked. Short synopsis of this book: 9-year-old Oscar is the narrator. He lost his father in the World Trade Center attacks a year ago. So this book is actually taking place in 2002. He finds a key that his father left with a note, and he goes on this epic quest to try to find the lock that the key opens because he thinks it will give him some insight into who his father was, maybe find his father's secret. Other characters in the book: his mother, who is a very strange personality. She seems very detached from the whole situation, as though she has moved on from the loss of her husband and is now dating this new guy. His grandmother, who lives in an apartment across the street. And then there's another narrator who is from a different time period, and I don't want to tell you too much about that because I don't want to give too much of the book away. On the morning of September 11th, Oscar goes to school as usual, and when the attacks happen, his school is dismissed, so they send him home. He waits for a while, hoping that his mother is going to come to collect him, and she doesn't. So eventually he makes his way home and plays the recording on the answering machine and finds out that his father, who works in the World Trade Center building, has been trying to reach the family to let them know that he's okay and not to worry about him. But he calls and calls several times, waiting for someone to pick up. Oscar is there for the final calls and doesn't pick up the phone because he doesn't want to talk to his father. Oscar, being Oscar, he removes the answering machine. He goes to the Radio Shack. He purchases a brand new answering machine. He re-records his voice on the voicemail message and installs this brand new machine as though his father never called. So after the attacks, when his father is missing and his mother is putting up posters and they're generally just looking for his dad, Oscar says nothing. Like I said, this was my first time reading the author, and I so enjoyed the different media that he used to tell the story. He uses words, of course. He uses a lot of pictures. So like this page only has 1 line with 4 words on it. This would be a line from the second narrator's notebook where he doesn't speak with people, so he writes in a notebook. There are pictures that the narrator uses. So this is a picture of a doorknob, but the focus is just not on the doorknob because this book is about doors and locks and exits and entrances. So this was the first time that I saw this in a book. Oh, see the doorknob, it comes back again. And again, and again. That wasn't the one before. There are pictures of different scenes. There are pictures of different scenes from New York. And this was the first time that I'd ever seen this in a book. So the book is printed in black and white, right? Regular print book. One of the things that Oscar does when he's trying to find the lock that his dad's key opens is he visits this art store and finds this page where people are testing markers. And so this is the page where they're testing the markers, and I won't show you more of it. There are a couple of pages of that. There's actually a clue to the rest of the story in that picture. Very, very well written book. I really enjoyed reading this book. I gave this 5 stars. You're gonna see more of this book later. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do something special with this book. So I hope, if you haven't already, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel because you're not gonna want to miss the thing that I do with this book later. Not today, but sometime in the future. So you have to subscribe to my channel for that one. The terrorist attacks on 9/11, they struck me in a very different way. I was downtown when the attacks happened. I saw what happened, and just having moved to this country, a few weeks before that. It was a very significant event in my life, and for a long time I just wasn't able to deal with fiction, whether a book or a movie that dealt with that story. So this is actually the first time I've ever read fiction that had anything to do with that part of history. Even even though I'm no longer avoiding the fictional representations of the event, of the September 11th events, I think the author dealt with the subject in such a respectful way that even if you were someone who was affected by the events, personally lost a family member, lost a friend, there were things in the story that you could identify with, but also not feel like he was capitalizing on your pain. So, trying to relate to the title, the theme of the book is love, it's peace, it is also generational curses, but it's more so about how we relate to other people and how we discover ourselves through our relationships. One of our foibles, I think, as humans is we tend to push away people who know us too well. So I think a lot of relationships end because people start knowing us too well. We're uncomfortable with them knowing us and being able to anticipate what we're going to say or what we're going to do. And we try to put distance between us. Extremely loud and incredibly close is that idea that the things that we don't want to be too close, sometimes they are. The things that we wish were closer, they just seem to be always, constantly, always out of reach. And just some things are just so loud that you can't ignore them. Extremely loud and incredibly close. 5-star read, and I totally recommend this book. Book number 5 was Unburnable by Marie-Elena John. I talked a lot about this book because I read it during the Diversathon and I was doing daily vlogs at the time. I'll put a link down in my description box so you'll be able to see that experience. But for now, I'll just tell you that Unburnable is a story of a woman named Lillian. She's from the West Indies, she's from Dominica, but she's been living in the United States for about 20 years. And during this time, she has not gone home. She hasn't really been in touch with her family. Her stepmother has been writing her letters, but she hasn't been responding. And at first, when she starts telling the story, you don't know why. And later, the book goes through her history, and we meet her mother and her grandmother. The story is also told through their eyes. So we're able to see not just what happened to them, but also to see and experience their motives behind some of the things that they do. Matilda is her grandmother. She's one of those women who lives in the mountains in Dominica, countries where there were enslaved people who ran away and formed their own communities in rebellion of the whole culture of slavery. So her grandmother, Matilda, is this really strong woman who is a faith healer. While we meet her as this strong woman of African descent, we also see her fall in love with her Simon. She starts a family with Simon in the mountains. He is one of the Caribs. In reading Matilda and Simon's story, we learn a little bit of the history of the natives as well as the transplanted Africans in the West Indian history. And so I really liked the book for that reason. There's a lot of history, not just from slaves, not just from the African perspective with African natives coming to the West Indies for slavery, but also as we read Matilda's daughter, Iris's story. Iris is the second generation and she is Matilda's daughter and Lillian's mother. Iris now, her experience is very different. Where her mother lived in the mountains and was part of this more primitive culture and practiced these African traditions, Iris is taken from her mother. Well, Matilda kind of gives her up and sends her into the town to live so she can attend the Catholic school, because we now start to see the effect of religion on these primitive people. So Iris goes to school. She has encounters with people that have very different backgrounds. So she is sent to live with a family that is Middle Eastern. So we now start to see the history of the Middle Easterners living in the West Indies, which is also another part of the Caribbean experience that I've never really read about in any other fiction. So I really enjoyed reading that history and seeing how Iris is marrying her mother's primitive culture along with the new life that she is learning, the influence of the Catholic Church, the influence of these foreigners who have embraced her, and trying to embrace all of this diversity into her own character. Later, Iris has her own daughter, Lillian, who is the main character in the novel. And as we follow Lillian's journey leaving Washington, D.C. and returning to Dominica to try to understand why some of the things that happened in her family, why they happened, and trying to resolve how they have affected her, how they have impacted her mental abilities, how they have impacted her psyche, and just kind of trying to make peace with some of the events that have happened and how she's going to move forward. Another character that popped up in the book was Teddy, Lillian's boyfriend, who also gets his own part in the book, which I didn't really love because there was, I think, too much emphasis, there was too much weight, too much power given to Teddy's character towards the end of the book. While I enjoyed reading about the rich and diverse Caribbean culture, the book started to fall down in the middle and towards the end because I could see the writer departing from some of the earlier themes that she was using. However, I don't want to dwell on the negatives in this book. There were lots of things that I really appreciated. It was very evident that the book was very well researched. The writer herself is from Antigua. She's not from Dominica. And while I've never been to Dominica myself, I understand that a lot of the West Indian countries share a lot of very similar history. In Jamaica, where I'm from, we also have a Maroon village, so I'm assuming that there are many other Caribbean countries that have villages that were established by these people by these Africans who had run away from enslavement. The use of music to tell stories, to tell folk stories, is something that I know very well from my own upbringing, from my own childhood in Jamaica. I really enjoyed several aspects of the book, and I would love to see what this writer publishes next. I would love to read something else from her. Book number 6 was The Colossus of New York, which was written by Colson Whitehead. Colossus of New York is a collection of essays written about 13 different aspects of living in New York City. The book starts off in JFK. You're coming in as a visitor, or maybe you're coming as a returning resident, and Whitehead has gone to the airport to meet you, which is not something that people do in New York very often these days. But imagine that Colson Whitehead has come to the airport to greet you, and he's giving you a little preview. Here's what you're going to experience. He talks about the subway, about the transportation, about the boroughs, about the smells, about the park, about just life in New York City, the buzzing. The fact that the book was published in 2003 means that a lot of the technological references are a little bit out of date. But as Whitehead discusses in the essay where he writes about the New York City skyline, he talks about how different the skyline is from 20 years ago. That is because there are new buildings being erected every day, but also because the New York City skyline actually changed forever on September 11, 2001, when the Twin Towers fell. And so even now, today, a person who maybe visited in 2000 and they haven't been back until today, they will look for the Twin Towers because that's just one of the things, because that was one of the famous landmarks that people looked for when they came to the city. Now they're not there. They've been replaced in the skyline kind of with the Freedom Tower. And so something that you expected is no longer there, but something that you never expected is now kind of in its place. If you sat down to actually write a poem, it's because it's about a subject that has captivated you. So every poem is a love poem. This book, Colossus of New York, is a love poem. It is an ode to New York City, written by a New York native, read by someone who is a transplant to the city, but who's fallen in love with the skyline and the constant change that I experience here. My life has gone through such upheaval, such highs and lows in the years that I have lived in this city. And so now that I call this city my adopted home, it is something that I enjoy, just to interact with the city and to love it. And I loved reading this book, which captures that feeling that I have for the city. So I ended up rating this book 4 stars. So that was book 4, 5, and 6 in A Closer Book. Thanks for watching me talk about books 4, 5, and 6, and I hope you join me for my next video where I'll talk about books 7, 8, and 9. Looking forward to chatting with you. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Whether you're enjoying hearing me give you a little closer look, closer book, whether you're enjoying me talking a little bit longer about each one of these books. Let me know what you're reading now so we can chat about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!